everyone, and welcome back to Let's Play the Sonic Mega Collection, specifically Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where we're now on the Sonic and Knuckles portion, which is somehow the larger portion. Which I guess makes sense since this is supposed to be the finale. And just like with the other Sonic the Hedgehog, the mainline Sonic games that I've done Let's Plays for, I will be cutting out all repeat instances of special stages. I will be leaving in one special stage though. It's not that it's dramatically different from the Sonic 3 special stages. Matter of fact, it's more of the same Blue Sphere format. You do get this fancy cutscene though, since these are actually the Super Emeralds rather than the Chaos Emeralds. I think I also left this special stage in because green and purple is a pretty nice color scheme, if I do say so myself. It's also the name of a very funny song, and I suggest you look it up if you're ever bored and need a funny song to listen to. And yeah, I mean, Blue Sphere is Blue Sphere. I don't really notice. I would consider the Sonic and Knuckles side of the Blue Sphere stages to be more difficult than the Sonic 3 portion. Maybe overall, or maybe on an individual basis, I'm not sure. But it's definitely more of the same Blue Sphere, let me tell you. And, you know, in Sonic Mania, I don't know how many times I've mentioned that thus far, but in Sonic Mania, they bring back Blue Sphere as a bonus stage. Not a special stage, a bonus stage that you do just for achievements or extra lives or whatnot, not Chaos Emeralds. You do a whole new set of special stages for Chaos Emeralds in Sonic Mania. You know, Sonic Mania is a decent game, but I don't know if I ever see myself doing a commentary Let's Play on that one. Maybe if there's enough demand, I'll think about it. But anyways, yeah, starting off with Sonic and Knuckles, obviously, there's going to be a lot about Knuckles, because unlike Sonic, he doesn't chuckle, you see. This was before Sonic Adventure, so Unknown for me it took a few years for that song to come out after this game. And I would argue that the stuff like that helped Knuckles' popularity a lot. But, you know, in the original game, Sonic 3 and Knuckles was a rival for Sonic, to a lesser extent Tails, since Tails just kind of tags along. Yeah, it's pretty cool for what it is. I mean, Knuckles was fooled by Dr. Robotnik, and I'm saying Robotnik because of the time period, mind you. Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik. That's his name, don't hurt out. Alright? Oh, actually, I just remembered, here in Mushroom Hill Zone, I know it took me a while to mention the name of the zone. It's a very nice zone, and it was brought back for the 3DS version of Sonic Generations. For some reason, with Sonic Generations, they had two versions of the game, and in both versions of the game, instead of using a stage from the Sonic 3 portion of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, they only used Sonic and Knuckles stages. That actually ties into something I talked about in the Sonic 3 Let's Play, specifically, was about some legal drama going on with Michael Jackson and his involvement with composing music for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Apparently not so much with Sonic and Knuckles, though. Even though these were meant to be one game, it was just like, no, Sonic 3 and Sonic 3 Knuckles took so long to develop the games that it just kind of happened that way. I leave in the Emerald cutscenes, but I still cut out the special stages, because again, it just adds on time, and if I did leave in the special stages, in this case, this would have had to be split, because it would have been over an hour, and I try to keep these Let's Play videos under an hour for individual. And I gotta say, even after cutting the special stages, this came pretty close. It's only a couple minutes shy. And for those of you wondering, there will be one more game that I will be doing a Let's Play for in the Sonic Mega Collection compilation. And unfortunately, for some reason, that game does have to be split up, even with the special stages cut out. It's not Sonic 4, because Sonic 4 wasn't a thing. It's a sort of related game that was released on the Genesis and the Sega Saturn, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, that'll be the finale of the Sonic Mega Collection Let's Play series, as it were. This is more of a finale if you're just watching my videos just to get my thoughts on the main 3.5, I don't know how you consider it 3, Sonic and Knuckles, but the main 3.5 games in the Genesis trilogy, I should say, or anthology, I don't know. But yeah, Sonic Generations, they only used stages from Sonic and Knuckles. They used Sky Sanctuary, which is actually one of the last levels in the game. I don't mean to spoil you guys, but I mean, it is what it is. In the, you know, the main version of Sonic Generations, the console and PC versions, and the 3DS version had Mushroom Hill Zone, which is the first zone of the Sonic and Knuckles portion, but this is technically in the middle of the full experience, and you might be wondering, is this harder than Launch Base Zone? No. What Mushroom Hill Zone does is that it serves as kind of a breather for Launch Base going into the next zone, which I definitely think brings the difficulty back up to snuff. I'm just letting you know about that. Another cool thing about Mushroom Hill Zone is that when you go from Act 1 to Act 2, we go from more of a spring-summer aesthetic to more of a fall aesthetic. Vaguely reminds me of the Click Clock Wood from Banjo-Kazooie, matter of fact. Another matter of fact is that I distinctly remember back when I was recording gameplay for Temple of the Azure Flame, Banjo-Kazooie and the Sonic Genesis trilogy were some of the first projects I had lined up once I discovered BizHawk, and you know how amazing of an emulator that is. So yeah, it's kind of nostalgic to look back on that. Hard to believe that was 2014, like 7 years ago as of the recording of this video. It's fun to look back on previous work and updated versions of said previous work. So that's very cool. But yeah, Mushroom Hill Zone is meant to be a breather between the tough Launch Base and I don't know if the next zone is tougher than Launch Base, but it's pretty tough. You'll see what that is. And yeah, it's also worth mentioning that you can actually get all 7 Super Emeralds in Mushroom Hill Zone before you even reach the next zone. So that's probably why they scaled the difficulty the way they did, not just because of the fact this is technically the second half of a larger game. Combined, Sonic 3 and Knuckles has more zones than Sonic the Hedgehog 2, though not by that much, surprisingly. It's definitely a longer game though, because the individual levels are longer than the average levels of Sonic 2, but Sonic 2 was such a big step up over Sonic 1 that it's just like, you know. Plus, again, I think I said this in the Sonic 2 Let's Play, but the fact that there were so many levels in Sonic 2, and the fact that you're going from one level to another so fast, usually between a minute or two each time, it really gives you the sense that you're going through the game fast. Like you're Sonic, the fastest thing alive, supposedly. Granted, that's a phrase that's not really said all that much in the games. That was more of a cartoon show kind of deal. Matter of fact, he mentions in the not the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the other Sonic the Hedgehog 90s TV show, in the opening theme, it's like, it's the fastest thing alive! You know, they say all that stuff. Anyways, though, once you've collected the 7 Super Emeralds, in addition to the Chaos Emeralds, you unlock Hypersonic, which is a lot flashier than Supersonic. So, if I'm not mistaken, the video file for this should have a lower brightness, so this way, those of you who are sensitive to flashing lights, hopefully this won't mess with you too much, but there's only so much that I can do with the editing on that, unfortunately. So, doing my best for you guys, and hey, save some files for this too. So again, mutually beneficial arrangement all around, but mostly I am concerned about this sort of thing. Actually, matter of fact, I noticed that as I'm getting older, I'm just naturally getting more sensitive to stuff like that anyway, and I'm pretty sure I'm not sensitive to seizures, so I guess it's for all the older folk out there too. And I don't mean older like old, I just mean like you're younger, you're kind of in the middle of that. Anyway, if you were to collect all of the oh, by the way, that's Eggman, or Robotnik, defeated him really quickly because Hypersonic has like a flashing light attack of some sort that you can spam by pushing the jump button. It's pretty nifty. Pretty useful for speedruns, I imagine. But, yeah. If you collect all the Super Emeralds, you become Hypersonic. But if you were to play as Tails, normally you don't get a Super Form with Tails solo if you get the 7 Chaos Emeralds. But if you get the 7 Super Emeralds as well, you become Super Tails, not Hyper Tails, Super Tails. And he just flashes, and he has access to a bunch of birds that'll fly around him, and they'll attack enemies for you. And if you do this with Knuckles, there is a Super Knuckles and a Hyper Knuckles, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if those are the actual names, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Super Knuckles is the same as Knuckles, more or less. It just has the usual invincibility perks. I think faster climbing, or maybe that's a Hyper Knuckles thing. The differences between Super and Hyper Knuckles aren't as big as the differences between Super and Hypersonic, I find. But at any rate, welcome to Flying Battery. This is probably going to be the first zone in the Sonic and Knuckles portion that will leave the biggest impression, or leave a big impression, for people playing this portion of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, because, yeah, Mushroom Hill is kind of a return to form to the Green Hill format, arguably, and is also scaled back in difficulty, not just for the sake of the fact that this is, they split the game up into two, so they have to have the first zone not be hard, but also so it would be a little easier for people to collect as many emeralds as they can to get back to the Super Form situation dealio, I would assume. There. Flying Battery, though, brings up the difficulty back to snuff after the breather of Mushroom Hill Zone, as I said. Launch Base Zone is pretty close to final zone tier in terms of difficulty, I would say. Maybe not the most difficult, but it's definitely up there. And Flying Battery is not a final zone. This is only the second of like 6 zones in Sonic and Knuckles, 6 or 7, depending on how you look at it. Give or take one. It's kind of weird. You'll see what I mean as we go through this, but yeah, it's a little weird. But yeah, Flying Battery is pretty difficult. I would say the difficulty of Flying Battery is probably somewhere around the Carnival Night Ice Cap territory for sure. So, you know, that's the 4th, 5th zone out of 6 of the Sonic 3 portion. The difficulty gets racked up a bit. Now, there are quite a few special stage rings here, but if you already have Hypersonic because you were very thorough in Mushroom Hill Zone, you don't really need to bother. Having Hypersonic or Supersonic, if you're just playing the solo Sonic and Knuckles, I guess. But if you have your Super Form, by the time you get the Flying Battery, it does make it a lot more tolerable. And you're not going to have as much difficulty, because a lot of these tough obstacles and so whatnot, the only real obstacle you'll have to worry about with the Super Form is bottomless pits and crushing. And, well, if you're really fast, you can usually bypass a lot of the crushing, I find. You'll also have access to, with Hypersonic, you can push the jump button again in the air to do kind of a second jump. Also a flash attack, like I did to Robotnik back in Mushroom Hill Zone. There's also this set of spikes that you push, and you have access to a special stage ring, which I go out of my way to get because it's an easy way to get 50 rings. Even if you already have the Super Form, tracking down the special stage rings is a pretty good and convenient way to get the 50 rings you need to access said Super Form. So, you know, it all works out in the end like that. So this is one of the most unique bosses in the Genesis trilogy, I think. I don't know what the name of this thing is, but I remember the first time I played this game, and I got to this boss. I smiled. I had a reaction of some sort. But if you have a Super Form, all you need to do is stand on top of it, and, well, the boss will resolve itself. I like how this worked out, where Tails is teetering on the edge the whole time. But yeah, I think it's the usual 6 or 8 hits or something like that. I don't know if the mini bosses are 8 hits too, or if that's just a Robotnik thing. But 6 or 8 hits, and if you're invincible, you can just sit there and let it do it automatically. It's still almost automatic even when you're not invincible. You just gotta jump off and jump back on. Wow. You go from Luigi does absolutely nothing to Sonic doing something maybe every once in a while, sort of thing. You know. Anybody remember those videos? I think they kind of fell out of favor after a point. Luigi wins in Mario Party by doing absolutely nothing, but that doesn't apply to every minigame. Yeah, that was a fun little series, little brief fad of sorts years ago. But yeah, another good thing about Flying Battery, and I think people will mention this more than anything else when it comes to Flying Battery besides the difficulty, is the music. Such a nice electronic feel to it. And you know what? I listened to it, and it really does remind me of the 90s, believe it or not. I think maybe I even hear a little bit of the Michael Jackson influence in there. Not as much as the Sonic 3 side of things, obviously, but I think I still hear a little bit of it. Well, matter of fact, I think Flying Battery was planned for the Sonic 3 portion, or it was like, there was a different zone order planned initially, back when the game was planned to be one full thing rather than two smaller releases. I think there was some research, and I think Flying Battery is actually supposed to happen, like, after Ice Cap or Carnival Night or one of those levels or something like that. It makes sense difficulty-wise for sure. So, yeah, that's very interesting how that works out. But then when we get to the next area, I don't know, things get a little weird there. I'm not a huge fan of the next zone, by the way, and I don't think there's too many people that are. It's also worth mentioning that Flying Battery wasn't brought back in Sonic Generations, but a game I mentioned earlier, Sonic Mania, they bring this back in Sonic Mania because, yeah, in Sonic Mania, they do a Sonic Generations thing where they bring back old zones, but since Sonic Mania is basically a 2D Sonic game, it's a 2D Sonic game made like if it was made for the Sega Saturn. So still 2D, but will occasionally take advantage of higher graphics fidelity and processing to do some fancy things with the graphics anyway. And the special stages in Sonic Mania are 3D models as well, so that's pretty cool. But what Sonic Mania does is that they'll bring back some levels, or rather a lot of levels from the old Sonic games, sometimes almost wholesale for like the first act, and then the second act, usually it'll do something new. It'll be like a newer layout, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, they bring back Flying Battery as one of the earlier levels in Sonic Mania, funnily enough, and yeah, what they do there is still pretty tough, to my knowledge. So, yeah, they bring back, think about it, yeah, they brought back mostly Sonic and Knuckles levels. I think they only brought back like one Sonic 3 level, maybe two. Technically, Angel Island Zone is in cutscenes, but yeah, I don't know. Sega, even to this day, just has a weird thing with Sonic 3. And I don't know if it's because of the Michael Jackson music controversy, but it's kind of annoying whenever Sega decides to bring up Sonic 3 Knuckles, and then they're like, oh yeah, you remember Mushroom Hill Zone and Sky Sanctuary, right? I'm sure so many people got to Sky Sanctuary near the end of the game. Oh yes, of course. Like, granted, Mushroom Hill Zone was the first zone in Sonic & Knuckles, so I'm sure people remember that level, but I mean, come on, Sega. Plenty of people are gonna remember Angel Island Zone, especially when it was brought back in later Sonic games, particularly Sonic Adventure. Hello? The whole Knuckles protecting the Master Emerald plotline, anybody? God. Anyways, back to Dr. Robotnik over here. This boss is pretty nifty. Kind of easy to figure out if you just look at it. Basically, you wait for Robotnik to swing around and jump on his cockpit when he's rotating around. Sometimes he'll rotate for longer periods or shorter periods, it depends. He doesn't move very fast. Just, steer clear of the spikes. Either stay outside of them, or you can stay in the center and just jump up when he comes right around with the rotation. Really not all that tough of a fight, all things considered. But I guess that does make up for the fact that the level itself is, again, pretty tough. Definitely difficulty-wise, I returned the form back to how it was during the later half of Sonic 3. And then we enter the next zone, which is going to be a desert-themed zone by the name of Sandopolis. At least I think it's pronounced Sandopolis. Since we're in a desert region right now, I'm going to let you guys listen to the music for a few seconds as I take a sip of water. Took my little sip of water there, and coincidentally I came back to 64 rings after getting that special stage ring, so that's pretty funky. So, Sandopolis, I'll give it points. Aesthetically, I think Sandopolis is a pretty nice zone. It's a desert zone. Those don't seem to be too frequent in the Sonic series. Well, I don't know, I guess maybe they kind of are, but like, not really. Oil Ocean maybe was kind of a desert theme. It definitely had desert-sounding music to it back in Sonic 2. And there are sand/desert themed levels in the Sonic Adventure games. I don't know. After that, I'm just like, here and there. But Sonic games seem to have a bigger fascination with green areas and city areas. Just look at the level selection for Sonic Generations on the consoles and the PC, for an example. Hell, even the 3DS version of Sonic Generations too, now that I think about it. But Sandopolis, this is probably going to be most people's least favorite zone of the Sonic and Knuckles portion side of things, and I agree. I am not the biggest fan of Sandopolis. Not this first act, and not the second one either, which, again, I'm going to give credit to do. The two acts of Sandopolis are pretty unique from one another. They almost feel like different zones in a way. You have to give credit where credit is due on the uniqueness scale of things. You know, I guess the Sonic and Knuckles portion does have a little more creativity and uniqueness going on, whereas the Sonic 3 portion kind of felt like more of a throwback to the older games in a way, you know. I guess Hydrocity is well, actually, Hydrocity is basically Labyrinth Zone done right, now that I think about it. Obviously, Angel Island is like Green Hill and Emerald Hill. Carnival Night's obviously a throwback to the Carnival level. Casino Night from Sonic 2. Ice Cap, actually, now that I think about it, Ice Cap was pretty much new by that point, right? I don't think there was an ice level in Sonic 2. So, that's pretty cool. And Launch Base, you already know what that is. Say hello to the boss of Sandopolis Act 1. And, by the way, it took me a lot of tries to get to the end of this level in just, like, 3 to 4 minutes, or how long this is going to take, but say hello to the prototype of the Egg Golem, I would argue. Yeah, you look at this guy and you look at the Egg Golem from Sonic Adventure 2, and, they could probably be related. They could probably be brothers or something. Mostly joking, but this boss is rather unique in the fact that you can't really do damage to it directly, per se. You have to let the guy keep jumping towards you, because what you want to do is get him to the edge and bump into him to get him into the sand pit. So he's technically a one-hit boss, which is unique. Again, the whole boss is unique, and once you know what you're doing, it's a pretty nice way to end the first act. It's kind of a tough one to figure out a fast and efficient route for. But Act 1 is the lesser of two evils as we enter the second act of Sandopolis Zone. And yeah, this is what inspired all of the ghost stuff, like Pyramid Cave and Death Chamber in Sonic Adventure 2. You can tell that they took a lot of inspiration for those levels from Sandopolis in general. Specifically Act 2 though. Because we're gonna run into some ghosts eventually, probably, if I keep not hitting those lights. If you stay in the dark for too long, some ghosts will start spawning in the level. And if it stays dark for too long, the ghosts will keep evolving and evolving. Oh, okay, you have to activate a capsule to spawn the ghosts. Yeah, this act can be really long if you don't know what you're doing, which, for most first-time players, this might be the first level where you'll see a timeout. Or the second, depending on how you deal with Carnival Night, now that I think about it. I guess Sandopolis is the Sonic and Knuckles equivalent of Carnival Night, now that I think about it. In terms of potentially stumping the player. I did a little shortcut there with the Lightning Shield. The Lightning Shield is a godsend. It basically gives you a double jump, but it also magnetizes rings, so if you don't have access to a super form, you definitely want to try and get Lightning Shield as much as you can, because they're like the next best thing to having a super form. And if you have a Lightning Shield and you're in super form, you won't see the Lightning Shield, but I'm pretty sure you'll still get the second jump, which is really only good for all of the super forms except Hypersonic that already has a built-in double jump, as it were. But yeah, having the Lightning Shield and, you know, getting the Hypersonic ASAP is going to make Act 2 of Sandopolis a lot, you know what I mean, a lot more tolerable. There's a bit of a risk of crushing, as you can see there. You definitely want to steer clear of those. The Scorpion enemies look pretty cool as well. And the ghosts, I guess they can be kind of cute when they're not at their full potential and not actually actively attacking you. The ghosts can be kind of cute, yeah. I'm not going to disagree with that thought process, but yeah, you can't ignore them now, because if you ignore them, they'll make their presence known one way or the other, let me tell you. But yeah, Sandopolis Act 2 is kind of a slow, prodding act Actually, kind of like Marble Zone from Sonic 1. So we got like a weird combination of Sonic 1 Marble Zone and Sonic 3 Carnival Night Zone going on here. But it's a desert level. So yeah, there you go. By the way, don't have access to a light, so I'm probably gonna lose the. Oh god, the ghosts are actually coming after Sonic now. Oh boy, they're not that aggressive right now, but yeah, they can get you. Good thing I already had enough rings saved up to get to Hypersonic, and then they're no longer an issue. As long as you're in your super or hyper form, you don't necessarily have to turn the lights on because they're not going to be a threat anymore. So just let them have at it, I guess. Also, the double jump that you get access to could be a skip during these sections where the sand is slowly rising, so you can get access to the higher areas of Sandopolis Act 2. Even if you're speedrunning this, which I almost am because I used a speedrun as a reference, this is still going to take like 5 minutes or so. So, yeah, it is what it is. This is arguably, I have to say this is most people's least favorite level, individual level in the Sonic and Knuckles portion. Maybe even the whole Sonic 3 product as a whole. And, I mean, once you figure out that drum thing in the Carnival Night and all that stuff, yeah. I find it hard to argue otherwise, honestly. There's also this part where you're on a zip line and you're doing some wall jumping. I don't think this was in the speedrun I was using as a reference, but just figured I'd show it off because why not? Plus you get rings automatically, so that'll help sustain your super or hyper form. So that's pretty cool. Actually, I think we're coming up to the boss now, or maybe it's still going to take a little while longer. A lot of these sand slides too. But yeah, you know, Sandopolis is basically the first real desert level of the Sonic series, I would say, and then it gets heavily inspired Sonic Adventure 2's desert levels for sure. Well, actually, yeah, there's more than 2 desert levels. Death Chamber, there's Pyramid Cave, there's Sand Ocean, Egg Quarter, which is basically Death Chamber, but not as hard or annoying. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, you look back at the Genesis Sonic games and how much they inspired even the Sonic Adventure games, especially Sonic Adventure 1, takes so much inspiration from the classic games, while still introducing so many new things, too. So, the boss of Sandopolis Act 2 is basically another Egg Golem precursor in a way, but if you have Hypersonic, you defeat it so quickly that it doesn't really matter. So, yep, 5 minutes and 5 seconds. Oh boy. And to think, it could have been so much worse than that. That's like almost speedrun. Alright, so now things are gonna heat up and get a good bit more interesting here, because now we're entering Lava Reef Zone, which is still a proper zone. You know, you got Act 1 and Act 2. There's a lot of fire going on, but there's also a bit of a cave theme going on too. I want to say at this point is when the special stage rings start to dry up a bit. There, obviously, you could find 7 or 8 in Mushroom Hill Zone between the 2 acts, so it's probably safe bet to say that the special stage rings definitely dry up after Mushroom Hill Zone in general. So, if you're at this point, you're probably not going to find too many of those. So hopefully you got your Hypersonic by now. And maybe you got lost in Sandopolis and ran into a few special stage rings by accident anyway. So that might work out just fine. But yeah, Lava Reef Zone, it can be pretty tough. The second act is quite a bit more interesting than the first act. You know, there's a lot of fire going on here. Oh, Fire Shield. It's probably a good time to talk about that again. I may have talked about it in Sonic 3, but this is a new part, a new video, so... Oh, I lost it already. Basically, the Fire Shield protects you from fire, which there's a lot of in this level, so it's a pretty good investment. You don't have a super form, of course. If you push a button in the air, it charges you forward, kind of like Hypersonic does, now I think about it. There's also this drill robot, so that's pretty cool. Defeat it pretty quickly, though. A lot of rings, for sure. You know. Oh yeah, I think Lava Reef is another one of those zones that gets brought back in Sonic Mania, I think. I'm actually not 100% sure about that one. I know for a fact Flying Battery and Hydrocity are brought back in Sonic Mania. I know for a fact about those. I think Lava Reef was too. But yeah, after Lava Reef, it's actually not much left after this. This is going to be 2 individual levels that technically count as Sky Sanctuary. And then after that is going to be the final zone, which... Actually, there's going to be more after that since I'll have gotten all 14 emeralds, so... We still got a lot of game left to go through here. So, Lava Reef... Oh yeah, there's also these smoke enemies too. That, if you go close to them, they'll start consuming your rings really fast for some reason. And that was a real thorn in my side when I was recording this, so... Yeah, not to mention all of the spike crushers, good lord. Kind of reminds me of Marble Zone from Sonic 1 a little bit, again. So, these things where you spin dash to make them go up or down, those are actually pretty nifty. I don't mind those too much. But yeah, we had an ice level in Sonic 3, and now we have a fire level in Sonic and Knuckles to really complement the full experience. And I think we're coming up to the boss, which should be... Oh, it's not that drill robot we saw earlier. Okay, there's these 2 tentacle things. Oh, and the hand! I remember that hand, because actually that hand is going to be brought back in a way, in a later boss fight. I guess this is like a Eggman robot precursor, or something like that? I don't know, this boss is weird. But yeah, the second act of Lava Reef is going to be a lot more interesting. Actually, was that the boss? Wow, okay. The boss of Act 1 of Lava Reef Zone is a hand and 2 robotic tentacle things. Okay. So, since this is Sonic and Knuckles, why don't we go back to talk about Knuckles some more, you know? It might be relevant pretty soon. By the way, the second act of Lava Reef is a bit more of a cool aesthetic going on. There's a lot more blue. Not as much of the fire, but still, there's fire. You don't want to let your guard down. But Knuckles, you know, Knuckles is a pretty cool character, honestly. I'll admit that, you know, in the Genesis games, you don't get as much of a feel for his personality as you do in the 3D games, obviously, where they have much more of an opportunity to get his personality across, you know, with the advent of voice acting and all that stuff. But just in the sprite world, you still get a lot of personality, too. So there's not a lack of it in the Genesis games, so... But you get a feel that Knuckles is definitely is a loner type, stays on the island all the time protecting the Master Emerald. A plot line they kind of drop in some of the more recent Sonic games for some reason. That or it is a thing, but they just don't bring it up because it would be repetitive. Because I mean, they basically use the Master Emerald plot line in. If you count Sonic Adventure as the follow-up to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, then they reference the Master Emerald plotline, either indirectly or directly, 3 games in a row since the Master Emerald is a big thing about Sonic 3 and Knuckles, obviously. So, yeah, you go from that to Sonic Adventure to Sonic Adventure 2. The references are less and less, but still there. And it's Sonic Heroes where I don't think the Master Emerald is mentioned at all. Hell, the Chaos Emeralds are barely referenced until almost the last minute. Similarly to Sonic Adventure 2. No. Chaos Emeralds were referenced early on in Sonic Adventure 2, obviously, since one of the characters has a Chaos Emerald early on, and they have an attachment to it, so, you know. And after Sonic Heroes, I don't recall the Master Emerald being brought up all that much at all. With the exception of, like, the Sonic Advance Trilogy, actually, which makes sense, because the Sonic Advance Trilogy is meant to be kind of a throwback to the Genesis games. So it only makes sense to reference stuff from the Genesis games. Particularly Sonic Advance 3 references the Master Emerald again. I think it's something you see near the end of the game, actually. And you collect Chaos Emeralds. But then again, you collect Chaos Emeralds in a lot of Sonic games, so mentioning that you collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds in a Sonic game is almost like saying you collect 120 stars in a 3D Mario game. Most 3D Mario games, yeah. It's usually 120. Or if you're playing the pseudo remake of Super Mario 64, it's 150. Like they're trying to be Pokemon or something. I don't know. Speaking of Knuckles, oh, he's gonna push a boulder and just knock you down and, you know, well, it's a bit worse than that. So this is the boss encounter for Lava Reef Act 2. It's a bit of a build-up, though. there's gonna be a bit of a build-up. Also, the boss is, it's another one of those bosses like the Flying Battery Act 2 boss that's kind of a long and drawn-out encounter, honestly. It can be kind of annoying, I'm not gonna lie, but, yeah, so... But this, I think, aesthetically and thematically, is a very good build-up to the boss fight. And having Knuckles there is meant to signal that Knuckles is going to become relevant fairly soon. Ah, what is this? The lava equivalent of the falling logs from Super Mario Bros. 2? Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. I feel like I have to make that distinction nowadays, which wasn't always the case, you know, but it's the advent of the internet, and people discovered that Super Mario Bros. 2 is actually a reskin of a game called Doki Doki Panic, or whatever the hell it was called. Yeah, it seems like people won't let that go, but us older folk born in the late 80s, early 90s, and grew up on NES and Super Nintendo games, it's Super Mario Bros. 2 to me. The Super Mario Bros. 2 that was released in Japan was retitled Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, which is a title I agree with a lot more, considering that it's basically DLC for the original Super Mario Bros. Or it's kind of like a Galaxy 2 situation, actually, now that I think about it. But what am I doing talking about Mario in a Sonic Let's Play commentary? Well, that's because this boss fight actually kind of drags out a good bit. Basically, you gotta stand on a platform, and the platforms deal damage. No, I'm sorry, not the platforms. The spike balls deal damage to Robotnik's mech. Thankfully, I cut it pretty close there with the super one, good lord, and I can't believe I talked through that whole fight, but there you go. Anyways, we finished Lava Reef Zone, and now we're gonna move on to, I think it's called Hidden Palace Zone, which is actually really the first act of Sky Sanctuary. Hidden Palace and then Sky Sanctuary is basically how it goes, but yeah, Hidden Palace is not very long at all. It's mostly cutscene and a mini-boss fight, actually. And then Sky Sanctuary is a one-act situation, but it's only a few minutes long if you know what you're doing. So, yeah, we run past that, get some rings, because that helps get on the teleporter. Guess who we're gonna be fighting here in just a little while? That's right, the one that doesn't chuckle, because unlike Sonic, he doesn't chuckle. The big red echidna, Knuckles, the echidna. Now, to be fair, he's a fairly fleshed out boss fight. I think he does require 8 hits, so, yeah. Also, check out that mural in the background. It's pretty interesting looking. I think I vaguely recognize the blue figure in that yellow, I want to say it looks like a fireball of some sort. Yeah, Knuckles is down and out for the count. Oh no. You know, as they say. Yeah, you know, they bring back character fights in Sonic Adventure 1 and, to a greater degree, Sonic Adventure 2. But in Sonic Adventure, they're only like 3 hits apiece, so I think that pacing is better, but kind of makes the characters seem weaker than they really are. Knuckles is a really strong character, and he kind of has to be to resist an electric shock like that, I would say. So, wow, there you go. But, yeah, it is at this point, with Robotnik having stolen the Master Emerald, Knuckles is like, you know, I'm thinking these guys are probably on my side, and that, egg-shaped fellow, yeah, probably should do something about that. Or, you know, something like that. But, yeah, this is the point where Knuckles comes to his senses. You know, we only have, like, a level and a half to go, or I guess technically 2 levels, 2 levels of content if you're going for all the emeralds, depending how you look at it. So the Death Egg looms in the background. It's finally launching. It was delayed because it was delayed in the launch phase zone, you see. So, yeah, now it's flying to the sky, and the whole point of Sky Sanctuary is basically to chase after the Death Egg. But, if you know what you're doing, this level is a giant vertical ascension of sorts. Kind of like a tower, I guess you could say. And they don't really have that in Generations. In Generations, it plays more like a traditional level, which makes sense. But since this is a 2D game, you know, going purely vertical, it's pretty amazing. It's a nice sense of scale in this level, for sure. A lot of clouds, too, obviously. Also, the Egg Robos are here. I want to say they were at least background elements up until this point, but now they're enemies you can deal with. And Egg Robo gets brought back as a character in Sonic R, believe it or not. The racing, basically the first real Sonic racing game that isn't Sonic Drift. Also, what's this? Looks like there's a metallic Sonic riding an old Robotnik mecha of sorts. Seem to remember that wrecking ball from Sonic 1, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's a direct reference to the Sonic 1 boss fight. Yeah, basically, Mecha Sonic, which is a new model of Metal Sonic after Silver Sonic failed miserably in Sonic 2, towards the end of it, but still. Mecha Sonic gets brought back. Not brought back. Well, it does get brought back in Super Mario Bros. Z, which is a nice, really great fan sprite animated series that I highly recommend to everybody, regardless of age or generation or whatever. That is some great stuff, and the artist could use all the positive encouragement and support he can get, let me tell you. Anyways, yeah, Super Mario Bros. Z, great series. Mecha Sonic is a nuisance in Sky Sanctuary. And basically, you have to fight him 3 times in Sky Sanctuary. The first time he brings back the Wrecking Ball boss, the first boss of Sonic 1. And here's one of the last bosses of Sonic 2, the one from Metropolis Zone. Which is really easy to cheese if you have Hypersonic. I tell you. So here's an interesting fact. In Knuckles' story, if you're playing either Sonic and Knuckles or the full game, if you play as Knuckles, Sky Sanctuary is the final zone. And I don't think that changes if you get all the emeralds. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But Sky Sanctuary is the last zone. And the final boss for Knuckles is Mecha Sonic. Actually, it's Mecha Sonic enhanced with emerald power. So he becomes like Golden Mecha Sonic or Super Mecha Sonic, depending on how you look at it. Which is pretty interesting. It means that Knuckles has at least one completely unique boss that Sonic does not deal with. Or Sonic and or Tails, I should say. Since Tails basically just does the same thing as Sonic, but as kind of a lesser super form, or a greater one, depending on how you feel about the flying flicky birds of doom, I guess. Having to get 14 emeralds to unlock them is a bit much, though, I would say. But it is what it is. I gotta say, the Sonic Generations interpretation of Sky Sanctuary really does this level some justice. Alright, so we're coming up to the third and final phase of the Mecha Sonic encounter. This is very similar to the Silver Sonic fight, but here's the difference. Silver Sonic, you didn't have access to rings, let alone Super Sonic. That is not the case here. So Mecha Sonic gets cheesed really easily. And if you save up your rings with Knuckles, you'll probably want to hold off the super form until Mecha Sonic goes super. This little part right here also gets recreated in Sonic Generations, but I think it's actually part of the level and not part of like the ending animation or what have you. But this is the proper ascension to the Death Egg, and well, it's time for Death Egg Zone, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh boy, oh man, this zone is something else, let me tell you. Metropolis Zone, you know, could be annoying times. It had great music though, and it was also 3 acts for some reason. Death Egg Zone is only 2 acts, for better or for worse, mostly for the better. And it's got some unique stuff going for it. There's some gravity gimmicks going on, mostly later on. There's also these devices that when they activate, they'll activate like a trail of light rings, and if you go through the light rings, it's kind of an automated process, and I think it looks really cool, honestly. Some of them are actually slower than just going through the level normally, though, which is kind of hilarious. Also, this hidden tunnel that takes you to another lightning shield and also some rings. That's pretty cool. That's the very definition of a hidden shortcut right there, man. Let me tell you. That kind of stuff was very, very common in older video games. Not so much in the newer stuff. In older video games, good lord. That stuff was everywhere. Even as, you know, as quote-unquote recent as like Mega Man X6 had stuff like that too. That's a game that came out in 2001 for the PS1. Although by that point, the PS2 was already like a year or 2 old. it's 1 or 2 years old, I should say. This thing is kind of annoying because you have to jump into 6 buttons to activate it and to be able to remove the gate over there. But the thing about it is, you have to control Sonic in midair, and at the same time, you can't really see ahead of you, and the thing is constantly moving, even when it's not on screen. So this could take a bit of trial and error, and this could potentially be a run killer if you're doing a speed run. Which I wasn't, but since I was using a speedrun as a reference, yeah, this part was kind of annoying to me. Especially if you managed to first try this, that's definitely an amazing feat of ingenuity, I would say. And or luck. How did it not connect there? Come on, there we go. That's definitely not the worst run of that I've ever had. This is another level that took quite a few retries. So this is a device I was mentioning earlier with the light rings. That looks really cool, let me tell you. Like, even for an old game, that just looks really cool. There are some rings underneath here, so that probably, yeah, I'm thinking that's one of the ones that probably wastes more time than anything else, yeah. You're just going in circles doing loop-de-loops when you probably could have just jumped on ahead, especially with Hypersonic, to get all those rings and stuff. Matter of fact, that's exactly what I do, because look at all those rings right there. If I didn't do that, I would have run out of rings. Oh, yeah. Definitely do that if nothing else. Oh, we're already at the boss of the first act. Actually, very similar to the Metropolis Zone boss. Man, I'm experiencing an unhealthy amount of deja vu here. But if you have Hypersonic, this boss is stupid easy. It's also referencing, like, the final boss of... Oh, wait. Not the final boss of Sonic 1, but like the laser boss from Flying Battery 2. Except the laser is moving and it's constant. And it's an obstacle? It's a boss? Oh boy. That was pretty close. Ended it with 7 rings. Oh, man. Go ahead and post your obvious reference in the comments about having 7 rings in hand. Yeah, feet in sand and all that stuff. Not a fan of that game. But it has a good soundtrack. So... reference the soundtrack all you want. And give it everything of all you got, you know. We're gonna rock this place. Place. This is not the time to be referencing it. I had a chance to talk about Sonic and the Secret Rings in Syndopolis, and I didn't, okay? So why in God's name would I bring that up now in Defect Zone? Because it's a game that has a good soundtrack. Okay. I see your argument. Alright? Let's talk back to Defect Zone. The first act, you were basically inside. Now you get to see a lot more of the space. And there's also a bunch of rings here, so you should be able to get to your super form or hyper form fairly easily. There's definitely a lot more of the gravity changing shenanigans going on here. And the boss of Act 2 has a unique gimmick. But yeah, there's also these elevators. They're pretty cool. But Defect Zone is really cool. Space Zone, you know. Oh, God. I'm going to take that cue as a sign that I should probably go and get another drink of water. Just give me a minute, listen to the good music, and I will be right back. Also, another elevator sequence. Those are fun. I may have forgotten to mention this, but if you have the lightning shield or if you're in your super form, you will automatically absorb electricity from like all of the stuff that it emits electricity. Not just here in Defect, but in the Flying Battery Zone as well. I don't think there's any other levels that has electricity as a threat though. Off the top of my head, maybe Carnival Night had some electricity. It also had some water, weirdly enough, so it wouldn't surprise me to know that Carnival Night is actually kind of a jack of all trades in terms of obstacles, you know. Here's another light ring loop-de-loop that, it was probably about 50-50 whether you could have used it or just done it yourself right there. I do like the spectacle of these devices, for sure. So even though the speedrun rarely use these, the ones that I used as a reference, I still probably went out of my way to get in a couple extras because, yeah, the spectacle's pretty cool. That one was pretty useful, I think. Although I think with the hypersonic double jump, you probably still could have reached the area either way. Yeah. Definitely use as many of those light rings, even if you think they might waste time, because if you don't have the hypersonic double jump, they might still save you some time. Relatively speaking, I should say. Another thing that might be worth mentioning is that you can go into the goalpost, like, bonus stages. Wow, I'm actually doing it. Look at that, I'm showing off a bonus stage near the end of the game. Yeah, this is a good way to get your ring count back up, because you're probably going to want to do that for the boss coming up. You know, make sure you get at least 50 rings, ideally more than 50, but, yeah. The bonus stage is a reference to casinos, which is a bit more refreshing in the Sonic and Knuckles portion rather than the Sonic 3 portion, because, yeah, Sonic 3 has Carnival Night. Sonic and Knuckles doesn't have anything of the sort, so that's pretty cool. Get at least 50, but ideally you probably want to get more than 50. I passed the bar. I guess that means I can be an Ace Attorney now. No, not really. So 68 rings, it's alright. It's just under the magic number, but... Oh yeah, there's a few more rings on the way, so 75 rings is pretty good. As long as you have an elemental shield, though, you can't really go in your super form, unfortunately. Now I think about it, maybe I'm just saving my rings for the stuff after this fight. So this is kind of a miniature Death Egg Robo. The unique gimmick about this boss fight, though, is that it will spawn small spike robots that you have to spin dash into at the right gravity setting, though, oddly enough. So you'll definitely want to have the spike part of the robots going into the Death Egg robot. It has a little shield going around it too, so that can be a little annoying, but basically if you just spin dash from one elevator to the other, and sometimes you'll be pushed back, that's okay, just go with the flow. If you just spin dash from one elevator to the other repeatedly, eventually you'll defeat this boss just fine, honestly, I find. I think this boss is one of those bosses that seems to be a lot harder than it actually is. I didn't even lose my lightning shield, isn't that something? Okay! Now is when things get a lot more interesting as we get to the actual final boss is, plural. So this final boss you fight against regardless of how many Chaos Emeralds you get, I'm pretty sure. This is the real final boss of the Genesis trilogy. And it's a pretty good one, honestly. I do think this is the best final boss of the three. Then again, I do think the Sonic 2 final boss, you know, Death Egg Robo, I think that's what it's called. That's Death Egg Robo. What in the heck do you call this? Death Egg Robo Mach 200? Good lord, this thing's a lot beefier than that other one. But I do think that the Sonic 2 one is cool, but the fact that you're forced to have 0 rings for it kind of cheapens the experience. Technically, you don't have rings for this boss, but if you get rings ahead of time and you don't die, which is a very real possibility, I tell you, you don't die, you'll hold on to your rings, and you can even use your super form here, which will definitely make the second portion a lot easier, because for this part, the first part is basically a rehash of the Lava Reef Act 1 fight, like I said. The hand will get brought back twofold. But for this second phase, you gotta hit the nose, and you'll have an opportunity to hit the laser floor after you hit the nose one time. You have enough time, roughly, to hit the laser 2 or 3 times. And if you're in the super form, you don't have to worry about getting hit by the laser, so it's a lot more likely you're gonna get 3 hits. And if the thing is 8 hits, well, you're gonna have to hit the nose only like 3 times. So. But it's not over yet. You still gotta chase after Dr. Robotnik. And don't let go of the right button. You need to hold the right button as much as you can, because he's not gonna go down easy. I have 6 or 8 hits there. You rescue the Master Emerald, but we're not done yet. Welcome to the Doomsday Zone. This has a really great music track, honestly. This is your bonus for collecting all of the emeralds. I'm not sure if you can get here with just the 7 emeralds if you're playing Sonic and Knuckles standalone, but if you get all 14 emeralds in Sonic and Knuckles, the complete experience, this is your reward. It's a fairly challenging boss fight. You're basically chasing a miniature version of the giant Death Egg Robo you just defeated. You have to deflect the missiles being shot at you back at the Robo. That's basically all you do. You get opportunity to gather your rings in the asteroid field ahead of time. It can be a bit of a time-consuming fight, especially if you get unlucky with the missiles, but overall, I think this is a nice end cap to the Genesis trilogy, and whew boy, let me tell you, I think I've just about exhausted my commentary on this classic series. It's been fun going through the Genesis trilogy with you guys. It's an amazing, some of the best Sonic the Hedgehog brand video games ever made, for sure. I don't know if these are some of the best games of all time, though, but by Sonic standards, these are top-tier video games that I can absolutely recommend to any fan of platformers. Do start with 2 or 3. Ideally 2. I think 2 is a much better starting point. Play Sonic 1 for the, historical factor and all that stuff, but Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, yeah, those are the peak, man. Wouldn't have them without Sonic 1, so that's definitely still a good play, too. Anyway, though, I'm going to let the music for this level play out, and I'll let you guys enjoy the end credits, and see you next time for the Sonic Mega Collection Let's Plays for one last game. You'll see what it is.